how's it going? Welcome to the next edition of Serverless Craic. How are you keeping, folks? All good?
Not too bad.
Super duper.
Playing it? Right, what are we at? We're going through the book. So we're flying through the book, which is good fun. We are at the end of phase three, I think, next best
Yep.
action. We're on the case study, which is Liberty Mutual.
Oh yeah.
Sounds
Big,
familiar.
big part of our working careers, I guess.
Yep, for sure. Yes, this is a good one to chat about, actually. I'm looking forward to this. So we all, so let me think now. So I joined in what, 2007, and you were there probably a wee bit before that.
I joined 2000.
2000, wow.
2005, I think I joined.
Yeah. So I think we all ended up in the same team around about 2007, 2008,
Yeah.
if I believe. I think before we probably all played football together, but I think we all gradually that's where we all met and found each other. But it was, so I always thought it was very interesting because we were all obviously in Belfast. And the Liberty in Belfast was kind of set up almost to solve hard problems,
Yeah.
any kind of big projects that needed serious software expertise. The Liberty in Belfast get involved, which is where we all
Yeah.
get stuck into things. But um, I think Liberty have always it's a home one. It's a Liberty Mutual. It's a Fortune 100 or Fortune 50, I think, insurance company, Fortune 100. $50 billion global company. They're one of the top 10 biggest insurers in the world. And they're over 100 years old. And I think they always had an interest in finding the latest technology. And because they're a mutual, it's effectively owned by the policyholders. So there's always this real kind of clarity of purpose or burning desire to look after policyholders. Like, and it was really, really, really inspiring, actually. It was like, whatever, we're looking after policyholders. So there's always a desire to use the latest technology to make things easier. So I think that's why we all sort of enjoyed working there. It was great.
Yeah. They can also
Um,
have a more strategic view because they're a mutual as well. They don't necessarily need to be reacting to the whims of the market every year, which is good.
every quarter, exactly. So it was great. So they weren't afraid to do a long-term bet in something
No.
that was going to make a big difference. Um, so I would say probably around, I think I started to detect the change around, I'd say 2011,
Yeah.
2012. I think we had done a lot of really big systems in like service-oriented architecture, like the biggest systems in Liberty at the time. We were kind of working on them,
Yeah.
and public cloud started to kind of raise its head, and we experimented with a few things, but we kind of got wind something was happening, and I remember thinking, I remember sitting thinking, of the leadership at the time. Everyone was focused on different things, and I was probably sitting going, well, I sort of probably have a better understanding of software. So I remember thinking we need to write software differently if we're
Yeah.
really going to leverage the cloud.
Yeah.
So there was this move towards the cloud, and that was there. And then I think the first conversation with AWS could have been around 2013-ish.
Yeah.
And it was very much I remember thinking, how can we write better software in the cloud? Because what we are currently doing will have to change.
Yeah.
Not because it was bad, just because the whole landscape was changing.
And I think we also had a good experience of bringing up big monolithic mainframe apps into more service oriented architecture at the time and
Yeah.
BPM.
Yeah.
Even though it was still on premises and it was on System Z and it was all virtualized sort of infrastructure, that sort of journey we went through to moving off of old legacy sort of COBOL, towards more like Java, JavaScript, more modern sort of microservices type, more
Yeah.
granular, more coarse grained services, more so and BPM, big IBM stack. We had a bit of that journey already, sort of
Yeah.
that expertise of how to break down big, strategic, important, business critical applications into more manageable, fine grained chunks,
Yeah.
more services, more and enabled a whole lot of things. So whenever the cloud started to take off, we were already thinking
Just
a little
getting
bit
it
into that sort of mindset, right?
completely. We were like effectively doing microservices before Sam Newman brought out the book.
Yeah.
And we were also we were doing modernization before it was a thing. We were like, as you say, we were cracking open those really old applications and kind of writing a better version. I remember looking at the 12 factor apps and stuff.
Yep.
and all that isolation. So it was a really good time to be working those big things. But so there's a real goal about writing software better, and then Lambda launched in 2014. I
Yeah.
remember thinking, ooh, this is interesting. And at the time, serverless first wasn't a thing at all. But remember thinking, because remember it was some of the people we worked with used to talk about below the line and above the line, especially the senior architects. You used to talk about above and below the line, and it was how they talked about what should we be doing and what should we be offloading. And they used to use the phrase undifferentiated heavy lifting way before I ever heard AWS said it. That they
Mm.
used to always use that phrase. So I think we were thinking in the right way of the stuff that we should be doing and the stuff that was below the line. So we had that concept already. And then we started playing about with serverless and actually completely offloading as much as possible, which was super conservative, or sorry, not super controversial at the time. I definitely think we had a bunch of people in Belfast thinking about serverless, and a lot of people from other offices were very much against it.
Yeah, lot of the traditional sort of inertia to big sweeping changes whenever all you knew was data centers and
Yeah,
on-premise sort of technologies, big mainframe applications, big monolithic applications, and very secure networking and all the stuff around that, with the network perimeter and all that sort of things was so there was always a not reluctance, but there was an inertia to change, and that we had
suspicion.
to convince a lot of key stakeholders that
Yeah.
this wasn't going to blow the business away. This wasn't going to wreck everything. This was going to be an actual viable goer.
Yeah,
Mm.
because I was involved in a lot of sort of leadership things about how do we lead the change across the enterprise, and I'd often be invited to speak to different groups. And anytime I went and met the infrastructure people, who I all knew them all really well, like, but when I met them as a group, they were kind of like, "So what are you saying?" So
Yeah,
I mean, it was always good conversation, and we always connected, and everyone was trying to do the same thing, but you could see. So I think what was really interesting for me is we started doing a lot of like proof of technologies,
yeah,
and writing projects where we could take something that was worth $50,000 a year and redo it so it was costing like $20 a year, and doing a lot of like document generation and doing things with serverless. So it was we were seeing massive speed and cost savings.
yeah.
So we were starting to put together this way of working, which I think we started to realize it was serverless first, and
Mm.
then I remember hearing the great saying, like if there's ever like a crowd, the best thing to do is kind of join the parade. So there was a loads of movement within the enterprise around becoming a tech company, because Liberty at the time would have been seen as an old sort of insurance company. So there's a narrative around 2015, 2016 about becoming a tech company.
Yeah.
Mm.
And the CEO at the time in 2016 wrote this technology manifesto, which I kind of helped write a wee bit. Like everyone helped write it. It was co-authored by the leadership team, and that enabled us to put a couple of key things in that manifesto to kind of point towards serverless first and some of the things that we were talking about. So that manifesto was like agile development, cross-functional teams, product focus, cloud native. There's a whole bunch of things in there, but we managed to sprinkle a few kind of nuggets in there.
Yeah, even
So
like you build it, you run it, you own it type mentality as well
yeah,
was like very, very much against the tradition of siloed teams and throwing it over the wall to the next team to do the next bit right of the life cycle. So it was a very good and aggressive and advanced manifesto that
yeah.
and we helped shape a lot of it, but it definitely gave us support from the leadership to do the things that we were wanting to do anyway, which was very important. So we had that clarity of purpose, we had that North Star that we were able to sort of line up a lot of the things we had already experimented with behind so that we could get
Yeah.
better traction and more adoption.
Yeah. I think
It was
even
almost going
yeah.
ahead, right?
No, I was just thinking like even that. I mean, it's such a lot of ground covered. Because even from the perspective of when you're sitting there way back in the day, it was what was it, 2011, 2012. I always used to remember like the long pole on initiatives was how quickly could I get the metal provisioned,
Yeah.
and then you would have went into you'd have been having to do your homework up front around like how much traffic am I expecting, how much CPU do I need, then you were kind of talking about like space on the mainframes. You were negotiating around your IFLs and it was
Right.
tricky, and then that team they're so maxed out, because they're having to kind of rob Peter to pay Paul, that when you start to talk about like modern cloud or new strategies, it's difficult, so you've always got to kind of do that stuff out inside and pioneer and explore, and I'm sure you
Mm,
guys did a lot of that.
mm.
Certainly
I,
I was kind of on the other side of it.
But
I get
I definitely felt I learned a huge amount from the infrastructure because we had infrastructure guys who were running big data centers and running serious metal. So I learned a huge amount from
Oh
those
yeah,
guys.
they're
Like I had
good
a
call.
Unix background as well, like so I was able to sit and work with those guys and they're absolutely brilliant. It was
oh,
never a case of replacing them. It
no.
was a
No.
case of how we kind of scale and evolve, and they were absolutely
And,
fundamental to that.
and it'll give you a high bar to get over. So you had to
Yeah,
go and do your homework. You had to do the
yeah,
POCs and the proof of technologies and make sure that you thought about it properly because they were world class engineers, right?
yeah.
You couldn't play the wool over their eyes. So you
No.
couldn't go with here, we're going to do serverless and have a half baked notion of what that meant. You had to actually think about what are the actual challenging problems that you can solve with this and be very clear about the value proposition.
Yeah, and let's not forget as well that name any names like, but when something went wrong and a bridge line was stood up, the CEO would jump on the bridge line,
Yeah.
and it was like, "All right, Dave, this is your bit. It's broken. What are you doing?" You had to be on it because
Mm.
the CEO was sitting going, "It's all right. What's going on?" And it was like, "Listen, let's make this blameless. Let's protect the policyholders and get this back online. So what are you going to do about it?" So there's no hiding on a bridge line.
I think even just a quick hang on sidebar on bridge lines. I always kind of say it's what makes good engineers, and
Yeah,
you have to join them bridge lines, and then you start to learn about all the things you wish you had in play at that point. It really
Yeah.
changes how you think about
yeah.
Yeah,
your
how can I
development.
not be on a bridge line with the CEO of a
Uh,
multi-billion-dollar company saying, "What are you going to do about it?"
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we later met and became good friends with many MCOs and absolutely brilliant, unbelievable leaders. But the fact that they really step on a bridge line, understand exactly what's happening, and ask the right questions and leave space to really work it out was brilliantly. So, like that and that technology manifesto was written as an Amazon six-pager, and it was co-written by the CIOs, and it was kind of published, and everyone I think I actually signed it at some point, but it was circulated far and wide as a manifesto for change. But I think we'd been doing our homework probably for 10 years before that for all the things that needed to go into that. So it wasn't just a document, it was a representation of a lot of preparation. And then there's probably key technical enablers because at around that stage we started getting the Wardley mapping.
Yeah,
So we would map out like what was happening strategically in Liberty, and we would say like, right, we need a better way to provision our workloads.
yeah,
We need a better way for developers to work with the system. We need testing to be done by the developer teams, security to be done by the developers. We need better pipelines. We need better source control. We're thinking in events, not service calls.
yeah,
All this stuff. So like we knew what we kind of needed and what needed to happen, but we also knew that we weren't. There was no point us um, writing a custom event router because, like, in fairness, we had tried those things and realized they were very difficult to maintain. We'd done a lot of custom development in the past. So one thing I think was really cool is that when AWS would bring out something like EventBridge, we would go boom, right,
yeah.
let's get that because it was much easier to just use EventBridge than to go off and like buy something like Kafka. You know what I mean?
And it's back to mapping. We had really good situational awareness, and we had really good clarity of purpose about what we were trying to achieve. We knew who our users were, and we then were
Yeah,
able to assess emerging components on their merits and say, well, oh, Lambda's come out. What does that mean for us, and how does that plug into our value chain and plug into our architecture? Hey,
yeah,
event bridges come up. All right, what does that mean for us? And we even started getting very smart about collaborating more with AWS and getting ahead of it. So
yeah,
we had a number of instances where teams were maybe building out a custom solution for something, and then the re:Invent came around, and that service was released, and that work was basically for wasn't needed anymore. So then we got much more collaborative with AWS to get ahead of. Hey, we're thinking about this. What are you working on? Is there stuff coming out that you can tell us about? We had some
yeah.
NDAs, all that sort of good stuff. So we were able to sort of delay doing what we were maybe going to do and wait for the service to come out, and then we could jump on.
Yeah.
That was
And then
huge.
the kind of thing about Simon's work, it's not just the map, it's that whole kind of it's the whole approach because we kind of knew about, look, sunk cost fallacy
Yeah.
and time to delay
Yeah.
and the evolution of capability. So like we knew the cloud formation, like the hardcore cloud guys would get it, but normal developers were just confused by cloud formation. So we knew something better needed to come along. And we didn't want to, there was lots of competition. And then when CDK came along, Mark, I remember you spotted it. Like I think it was the
Yep.
day it came out, you were like,
Yep.
boom, that's it.
Yeah, let's go.
And we sort of started, we cracked on that straight. I think that was maybe 2018, 2019. And
I think it was just sick of writing 10,000 line cloud formation templates.
I mean, like we had a problem. We were just waiting for the solution to come along, so we just jumped on it. So things like that were really cool. But again, you have to really understand the problem space. A lot of times, and you see this in AWS, they'll bring out something like, something mad like, I don't know, bracket. And you're like, what does that do? And then you read about it and you're like, I don't even understand what that does.
Yep.
It's like it's not aimed at you.
Yep.
But there's other things that come out that are absolutely hitting the problem that you have, and that's the things you need to jump on.
Yeah, and I think like one of the big key enablers was around proper agile teams and properly trying to shift left a lot of the siloed approach, right, and try to make it so you build it, you run it, you own it, and creating an environment where that was possible. And there was a lot of inertia barriers that we had to get through to make that possible, right? We had to have a lot of infrastructure as code, we had to have a lot of developer portals, but a lot of it was even like, how do you test this stuff? So like we invested very early in things like BDD and Cucumber, and we brought in Matt Wynn to do sort of workshops and enablement stuff. Liz Keogh came as well, and
Yeah.
did lots of talks just to really see that sort of that testing as the whole team practice, right? Bring those sort of that mindset and that culture in, and it's funny because they're really heavy into like specifications and spec-driven development and sort of BDD. And with the AI wave, we're starting to see that coming through now again. They need to be able to specify the behaviors of the system up front. So it was really interesting that again, it helped really enable and empower teams to do more things.
As your capabilities evolve, and you do have the ability and power to ship to production faster, you have to change your methodologies as well, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of that was a journey we went on, and it was it was far from perfect. I don't know what you think, but I learned tons. I mean, like the issue is you can see all this fancy new shiny stuff over here, and you instantly want to go over, but like there are situations where you should probably migrate over modernize, and and vice versa. I think there was tons of those sorts of lessons, like slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
There you go.
Just putting yourself into a good position where you can then iterate and incrementally kind of move. And a lot of the more successful areas, they in terms of taking that on board and that modernization, they'd have picked an area and focused on it. And sometimes the best bet is to just take a slower but more methodical kind of approach.
And I think one of the big ones that I know, Mike, you were the sort of pioneer of, was around and really engaging the security teams, like mapping out where are the inertia barriers, what's going to slow us down. And a lot of it was, hey, trying to get it past the security team and getting it into production was a real bottleneck. And then you're a big champion of threat modeling and collaborative threat modeling and the threat modeling templates and all that sort of stuff. Really brought them into the picture, brought security into the team in a much more holistic fashion.
No, 100%. Like, I mean, a lot of, again, at the start, you're starting with a massive enterprise. So it was a whole socio-technical maneuver, and yet like different, your roles and responsibilities changed, with that speed, you've got to own way more. There was a whole shift left. So now teams are owning their own infrastructure. Well, how do we deal with that? Okay, now they can ship every other day. How do we get good visibility into system regression? And so again, there was a whole load of maturity, but even now you're kind of going, it was absolutely the right thing to do, because the big inertia points, how do you identify those teams where we got to help them along in terms of what next? You got to be moving with the times. And I think even now, I'm sure a lot of the stuff we're doing in recent, it's the same sort of thing, but the industry is still shifting more and more left into the team, with AI and that. And so I think it set them up in a good space.
And it was funny because
that trend continues.
Yeah, and
Mm.
because the teams were doing so much more and they were able to deploy rapidly, it very quickly became, well, what should we do next? So then the teams were becoming much more product-led teams. They were starting to build a lot of product skills themselves, and then trying to work with the product leaders and the business leaders in those days and the business analysts to understand, well, what is the next most valuable thing we can do? What is our next best action? So, as the teams really built out these muscle memories and built out the skills and capabilities to actually deliver world-class software in minutes into production, then they're starting to think about the more, well, what is our clarity of purpose? What is our actual next best action we can take for
Mm.
the impact of business?
And
Yeah.
all the cliches as well. You read about, like, I mean, we'd have security guys, and they'd say, like, you're like how do you sell security on threat modeling? And they'd say, well, you have to do a code review. Who says you have to do a code review? The auditor. Right, well, let's go meet the auditor. Why do you have to do a code review? Well, this is the control, and you look at the control, and it goes, right, well, this is what you have to do. Well, okay, well, I see how the code review work, but what about a threat model? Oh, that'd be even better. Okay. Remember the guys were auditing they were auditing cloud applications.
Yeah.
We went and met them and taught them how to audit serverless applications. We gave them the architect, the framework, and says just ask those questions. They're
Mm.
delighted. So you just go meet the people who are doing the work and make their job easier.
Yep.
You know,
Right.
it's step outside of engineering and
That,
see what else in the
I
company.
think that was
So
revolutionary. It's like, let's just go talk to them.
yeah,
It's like
what's
let's,
your
let's
man's
don't
name?
face
Go
the
and give them a ring.
bureaucrat.
Or even if you're over in Boston, call them their office and meet them for a cup of coffee and ask them, like, what are they struggling with, and then help them. And I think, I mean, around upskilling and stuff, I mean,
Yeah.
I remember even talking, remember the famous saying, like, you're trying to train a bunch of people, and the CFOs is why we're spending a lot of money. What happens if we train them and they leave?
Yeah.
And you respond, well, what happens if we don't train them and they stay? So, I mean, there's always really good training. Lots of unconferences, open spaces, like internal evangelism. Just get people really excited about the change in the tech. And again, your value flywheel starts turning. So that's the whole, and empower teams as well. Like,
I think a lot
so
of the upskilling was by internal people as well. We brought in
yeah,
external experts and expertise and workshops and whatever, but we got a lot of value in people like ourselves and others, actually crafting the workshops and delivering the workshops themselves. It made it so much more impactful and tangible. If you see your peers, you're delivering, this is what worked for me. This is
yeah,
what you can do as well. Here's an environment where you can try these things out. It really removed a lot of the fear of, oh, I need to, I don't know anything about the serverless stuff. I don't know anything about CDK. I don't know anything about threat modeling. Once we did hands-on collaborative workshops with people, it was really good.
Mm.
And then the thing as well, like I used to look after the conference budget, and this isn't in the book now, but I used to go after the conference budget, and somebody would say, like, I want to go to a cloud conference in London, and you go grand, and you send them off to a cloud conference in London, and then they come back and go, for God's sake, it was ridiculous. Sure, McCann sit and say he knows much more than those guys, and you go, yeah. I know. So why don't you listen to him a bit more? Like, and I used to joke call it a conference budget because people would go to a conference, realize that they actually knew probably as much as the speakers, and they would come back really confident in
Yeah.
their ability. So it's not that, you go to the odd conference to learn, but most of them you were just hearing stuff that you're already doing. So it built confidence in people.
It was a little bit of external validation to drive improvement internally, right? So
Yeah.
we'd almost get a few of the people who were maybe a bit more reluctant to here go to this conference with us. You'll see the speaker telling the same things that we were saying, and it had a bit more of an impact when you see some world class, famous speaker saying exactly the same things we were saying.
Yeah.
It was
Did
always a
that
great
numerous
maneuver.
times. It's funny.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, it was a good journey, and then I suppose that was like that manifesto was 2016. We've done a huge amount of stuff in the years after that. There was a massive move over to the cloud, and then you started to see real, like, major business benefits. Teams delivering really quickly, stuff just operating really fast. New products coming in thick and fast.
Yeah, the ability to scale rapidly with rapid changes in demand. Some of the COVID cases, I think, there's some of the ones we were
That's right.
through, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was interesting. Yeah, when COVID hit, there was a lot of the serverless stuff. It responded with the need. So either it ramped way up with a load of traffic or it ramped way down. And the costs kind of matched that ramp as well, like, or either it increased or decreased. So interesting time, like. And then again, then you start to see a lot of Liberty stories at AWS events, which was cool as well, like.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You start to see there's still lots of good ones coming out from the guys in Liberty. So
Yeah,
you
it's brilliant. Yeah, it was
brilliant,
something last week since
really
seen a
good.
talk, brilliant talk. So it's good. So I think it's. I mean, I would say it's worth having a look at the book and reading some of the details, like. But it was a really interesting change management case, and it was a brilliant modernization example, like. And it really does take a village. People would say like this one
Oh, yeah.
person did it. No, it takes a village. It takes everybody to kind of pitch in.
And it takes sustained effort. It's not
Yeah.
something you can do overnight. It takes multiple years to actually have the impact you want.
Yeah. Anyone says they've got a 6 month modernization project, say no. It's
Yeah,
like it's like a rocket ship. Once it starts, it never stops.
the
Yeah.
communities at Liberty were brilliant.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the communities of practice and just like it was loads of smart people in there. So
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. No, it was good. It's a good story. Glad to see. I mean, you still see stories coming out like about brilliant things happening. Like so, it's
Mm.
but again, you need the organizational support. They back engineering excellence. They give people the afternoon off to go and do an open space or do an on conference. I think it's
And
all really
also, and
important.
also give them the permission to speak about it externally. A lot of big orgs don't necessarily support the evangelism or the external communication. So it's a big kudos there to Liberty to, like, I know they supported us when we wanted to speak externally and do stuff. So it's a really nice culture to be able to, talk about some of the amazing stuff that people are doing internally, externally.
Yeah. And then that was another time we wanted to do a talk. Okay, with marketing? Okay, let's go and talk to marketing people. Let's go. What can we say? What can we not say? Okay, that's what we'll do. Thank you very much. It's good crack. So it is a good case study. Lots of fond memories. Lots of hard work as well.
Mm. Lots.
Oh yeah, lots of late nights and long weekends.
Yeah, I had hair when I joined Liberty.
Which brings us nicely on to the next chapter, which is problem prevention culture. So
There you go.
talk about that next time.
That'll be fun. All right. So that's a good one. That's the crack then. Well, give us a like or a follow on the serverless-first.com on YouTube and on LinkedIn. And come back next time for what are we into? Phase 4 of the flywheel,
Yeah.
long-term value.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Cool. Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.